I invite you to come with me on a trip through the imagination isles. No human body can visit these islands. Only the spirit can come. Your spirit is always a welcome guest. It is difficult to find people who can produce this material of dreams. A very, very few people have this ability so strongly marked that they are set apart and given special training. These people become musicians and poets and painters. Almost all of us have some dream power in our childhood, but without encouragement, it leaves us. Through luck or natural ability or special training, somehow that happy man can still find his way to long, refreshing vacation trips to the imagination isles.
Those are the words of a sensitive, good-natured painter by the name of Grant Wood. The year was 1938. Grant was 47. And yet, unlike most painters, he had already achieved national recognition for his work. In as few as 4 years, the saga of this illustrious Iowan would come to a close. But the wealth that Grant Wood has left the people of Iowa and the world survives today. As a boy, Grant Wood pored over the pages of The Craftsman, a magazine concerned with the art of handicraft. One of the foremost proponents of traditional design, Ernest A. Batchelder published articles regularly in The Craftsman. It was from these essays that Grant Wood first studied and practiced the principles of design. On the night of his graduation from high school, Grant Wood left Cedar Rapids for Minneapolis to study with Batchelder. For 2 summers, Wood totally immersed himself in these traditional theories and practices. The influence of this instruction was to have a prominent and long-lasting effect on Grant Wood's work. After a year's tour of duty in the Army, where he was known for detailed sketches he created for friends and officers, Grant took a job teaching art at Cedar Rapids School. He saved what he could from the teaching job, and with his savings, Grant went to study in Europe. In all, he made 4 trips abroad and visited France, Germany, and Italy. Grant painted continually during these excursions and experimented with various styles. This exposure to different artistic treatments was a valuable period, but Grant's temperament and interest always led him back to Iowa. It was at home that Wood was able to develop his own style and to practice other forms of expression. He never limited himself to painting. Grant also produced in such areas as metalwork and jewelry, furniture and stained glass. No matter what medium, Grant transformed into an art experience what normally would be commonplace. Batchelder's influence can be readily seen in Wood's work. The balance, tone, and arrangement of these paintings are common elements consistent throughout the body of Grant Wood's art. The respect and admiration Grant Wood held for several artists of the Renaissance is expressed in his use of traditional geometric design and the marriage of form and narrative. Each painting was meticulously planned. Fine details were added to the sketches in preparation for the final work. Grant was precise and worked perseveringly until he achieved exactly what he had set out to accomplish. This strong sense of design in Grant Wood's work flowed together with his creative illustrations of Iowa life. The result is a distinct group of paintings that speaks universally. It's fitting that the people and the way of life he so cherished and duly recorded on canvas were then treated to the fruits of Grant Wood's labors.
I find the great farming section of the Middle West a various rich land abounding in painting material. The material of the Midwest seems to me to be more sincere and honest, and to gain in depth by having to be hunted for. Of course, my feeling for the genuineness of this Iowa scene is doubtless rooted in the fact that I was born here and have lived here most of my life. Our cardboardy frame houses on Iowa farms have a distinct American quality and are very paintable. To me, their hard edges are especially suggestive of Middle West civilization.
In northeastern Iowa, where Wood grew up, the land was fertile and hilly. Nature was kind and benevolent, and agricultural production dependable. This relative Garden of Eden is what Grant Wood remembered from his childhood and what he painted. Labor-saving machines were not a part of farming around the turn of the century when Grant was young. Farm life demanded a great commitment. It dictated one's education, work routine, social activities, and in many cases, even one's religious preferences. Cedar Rapids, where Wood lived for much of his life, was not a typical Iowa community. It was one of the largest industrial cities in the state. It is here that Wood made many lifelong friends and patrons who applauded his creative personality and poetic visions. Grant's mother was an especially important part of his life and supported the young artist in every endeavor. Sister Nan understood Grant and was a favorite model for his paintings. Wood was provided with a place to live for many years by David Turner, a Cedar Rapids mortician. At number 5 Turner Alley, as Grant most aptly christened it, he had the opportunity to solidify his concepts of art and create his own works. Grant's view of Iowa and its people developed in the paintings he made here. In the portrait of David Turner's father, John B. Turner, Wood captured the determination of a businessman with a pioneer spirit. Here is a tribute not only to men such as Turner, but to the spirit found in the people of Iowa. It was this ability to keep in close contact with the life around him that enabled Grant to have such an insightful view of his native land and its people. But it was Wood's paintings that made this richness of life an acceptable subject and brought it into the mainstream of American art. He saw teaching as an extension of being an artist, and through his art, Grant Wood taught. From this desire emerged a new project. In the summer of 1932, Grant co-founded an art colony at Stone City, Iowa. The abandoned quarry town sits in a valley formed by the Wapsipinicon River, north of Cedar Rapids. Makeshift communal living accommodations provided for a stimulating exchange of ideas and an inspiring and enlivening atmosphere just right for the creation of art. For 2 summers, the Stone City Colony and Art School was a haven for artists and art students. On the weekends, it was an attraction for the local residents. The patrons were treated to student exhibits and encouraged to purchase what they liked. These receipts went to support the colony. Stone City serves as the manifestation of Grant's personal philosophy toward what art should be and how it should be viewed. The experiment lasted only 2 years, but the idea was to be with Grant for the rest of his life.
It is our belief that a true art expression must grow up from the environment itself. Then an American art will arrive through the fusion of various regional expressions based on a thorough analysis of what is significant to these regions. Stone City Colony has this for its objective.
We search the world over, Batchelder wrote. We look everywhere but within ourselves to find some thought to render with our tools. Everywhere but to the abundant life about us to find some motif or suggestion. Grant Wood took Batchelder's statement and adopted it as a part of his own philosophy. In 1931, he began to speak publicly about a new movement in Midwestern painting. Regionalism was the generally accepted title of this style, and Grant sought to establish it as an internationally recognized American school of art. Wood saw regionalism as an art which interprets imaginatively the life, culture, and setting of a given locale. Art which is created by an artist native to the region.
In the early 1930s, the final bolts of the Depression staggered the United States. Profoundly shaken, critics, intellectuals, and the people at large began to evaluate the cultural resources of their own country. America began to look inward. All the varied and complex facets of American life are being transformed into a living art. Our artists no longer have to apologize for interpreting the native scene. Every nation, every age, has its own art to create. Occasionally, I've been accused of being a flag waver for my own part of the country. I do believe in its people and in its art, and in the future of both, and this with no derogation to other sections. I believe in the Middle West in spite of abundant knowledge of its faults. Your true regionalist is not a mere eulogist. He may even be a severe critic. I believe in the regional movement in art and letters, but I wish to place no narrow interpretation on such regionalism. Mural painting is obviously well adapted to government projects, and it is also highly suitable for regional expression. It enables students to work in groups, to develop original ideas under proper guidance, and to work with a very definite purpose.
The Public Works Art Project, sponsored by the federal government during the Depression years, gave Grant Wood the opportunity to supervise the paintings of these murals in the Iowa State University Library. The project offered students a chance to refine and demonstrate their skills, and Grant was pleased to provide another example of regional art which was readily accessible to Iowans. Grant Wood's most provocative and controversial works are his satirical paintings. These are not the ones which take us to the imagination aisles, but ones that provide us with a revealing look at ourselves. In 1932, Grant completed Daughters of Revolution. It portrayed women whom Grant believed naively worshiped their forefathers. Wood saw them as class snobs, and this snobbery contradicted the principles of equality for which the revolution stood. Nevertheless, many people criticized Wood because they thought he was satirizing patriotism and the revolution itself. The Midnight Ride of Paul Revere makes a similar satirical statement towards patriotic legends. Here we find a typical example of Wood's ready wit. He changed the New England locale of Paul Revere's ride to a Midwestern river valley. He mocked the myth-makers, such as Longfellow, who wrote the famous poem, by transforming the trusty steed into the likes of a rocking horse, and by portraying a road that is too smooth to be treacherous. Wood preferred this sort of light comedy to severe criticism. These paintings catch a glimpse of the paradoxical nature presented to us by Grant Wood. His characterizations mimic the attitudes and actions of their real-life subjects, but they also reveal Wood's own genuine respect and affection for them. In Parson Weems' fable, Grant created a parody of the story about George Washington chopping down the cherry tree. He felt the humor and delight of the fable had been too long taken for historical fact. And in his own way, Grant Wood attempted to correct the misconception. Honorary Degree captures Grant himself in a caricature. Here was a supposedly unsophisticated country boy from Anamosa, Iowa, who had won the respect and praise of institutions he never attended. Grant Wood continually looked to small rural areas for inspiration. While driving through Eldon, Iowa one day, a small arched window caught his eye. American Gothic catapulted Grant Wood into the limelight and effected the greatest impact on his career. The lines of the Gothic window are repeated in the faces of the couple in upside-down pitchfork, creating an overall Gothic design. Did Wood perceive the inclusion of a Gothic window in a simple frame house as being absurd? Was the Gothic design to represent the pretentiousness of the people? Was he, as some suggest, criticizing the narrow prejudices of the Bible Belt? To some, it appeared that he was suggesting all of these. And so, along with overnight fame, came a barrage of criticism. The strongest judgment was leveled by people who thought that Wood had betrayed his roots in ridiculing this conservative rural couple. He hadn't anticipated such overwhelming public response. Much of the furor had been created by a mistake. That is, a title. The Iowa farmer and his wife had been put forth instead of the proper title, American Gothic. Throughout the controversy, Wood maintained that American Gothic represented the types of people he had known all his life, and that no ridicule was intended. Grant suggested that if false taste and fanaticism existed in reality, then by depicting those traits, he was simply portraying reality.
Any northern town old enough to have some buildings dating back to the Civil War is liable to have a house or a church in the American Gothic style. I simply invented some American Gothic people to stand in front of a house of this type. The people in American Gothic are not farmers, but are small town, as the shirt on the man indicates. They are American, however, and it is unfair to localize them to Iowa.
But any explanation fell short of reversing the painting's image. Opinions had been formed, and the widespread media coverage only inflamed the matter. Grant Wood had become famous. American Gothic had become famous. And there was no way to effectively or totally correct the popular misconceptions about the work. Whether or not Grant Wood had intended such a strong satirical statement didn't matter. Nor did it matter if he approved of the interpretation of the painting and the attention it received. In cosmopolitan areas, the public enjoyed the comic aspect of the caricatured couple. In eastern states, the painting came to represent the stereotype of the rural, and especially the Midwest. On an international scale, American Gothic became one of the world's most distinctive, readily recognized, and long-remembered works of art. As its fame grew, the painting became almost like a logo for the United States. And Grant Wood came to be seen as a representative of rural America. The utopian representation of farm life, with the farmer tending his crops by hand on a small scale, are preserved in Wood's creations. It may have been a tribute to the pioneer spirit of the farmer, the rugged individualist, and to the ever-productive land. But how is it that an artist in contact with life can paint fantasy-like scenes which lack the hard edges of reality? Didn't his paintings perpetuate myths which were interfering with truth? Wasn't his criticism of myths which obscured the truth the same kind of criticism that was directed towards his own work? Is this another inherent paradox of Grant Wood, this man who was a myth maker and a myth debunker? Whatever the answers to those questions are, Grant Wood was able to take regional responses, to extract the local values and make them universally recognizable. He was able to use his regionalist philosophy to celebrate the natural qualities found in the different regions of the country and make them known. But how could this regionalist be the same Grant Wood who beckoned us from our dull, ordinary world into the imagination isles which transcend the regions where we live? Grant Wood the artist and Grant Wood the man defies simple answers and descriptions. It is the paradoxical elements in his work and his writings which allow for the diversity of interpretation, for the responses of admiration and respect from some people, and resentment and dislike from others. In reviewing his life and work, we find, on one hand, a person who wore bib overalls and subscribed to a simple, small-town life, an artist who was interested in regionalism and painting farm scenes, and who was in some ways a victim of media exposure. But we also find a clever man who may have helped perpetuate the image of himself as a simple country person. And we find an artist whose works are sophisticated and show a profound understanding of European art. We see an artist who skillfully used the power of satire and a man whose views were widely published. These questions and paradoxes are important because they give us a look into the man. The art stands by itself to be seen and interpreted by each one of us. and it stands as a legacy to an Iowan who allowed us a different view of ourselves and our lives.
People are still laboring under the old misconception about art. They still think of it as something remote from their daily lives. It is the misfortune of many of us to live unvividly. Our senses give us a dull, secondhand, fragmentary account of what is going on. Only too infrequently do we do something that we can say was an experience. The aim of art is to teach people to live happier, fuller lives, to extract more out of their experience, whatever that experience may be. There is not enough unity and clarity in our experiences. There is not, in other words, enough art.